and then we'll look at the performance analysis again. It's looking at retention and the conversion rates, the average revenue, day 7 per user, CPI, and then start to look at the tracked data. I'm not going to get into all in detail now. The tracked data, pairing that to understand the organics separately, and then looking at the organics plus the tracked, and then against the audiences and the influencers, so as see what the correlations are.
This is a no bullshit gaming show where we talk about games and their revenue in great detail, powered by our ad monetization, game design, and user acquisition triple threat expertise. Welcome to the 2.5 Gamers, the unfiltered truth served with a side of giggles. Let's not forget this is a 4 a.m. conference discussion vibe, so let's not take it too seriously. Tune in now and stay 2.5 steps ahead of the gaming industry.
Cool. I think now's a good time. And so, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we'll be covering diversifying mobile game UA with influencer marketing. Just a little bit about who we are. So I'm Ed. I set up media bodies around 12 years ago now. Always been in the influencer marketing space, starting predominantly in YouTube. These days, diversified into podcasts, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and some creative. But today is the focus on the performance side. In the past 8 years, really been focusing on mobile games as a whole, as a business, making up the vast majority of the work that we do. All the way back, clients like Moon Active, when they were sort of a very small team, and we still work with those guys today, through to really, clients around the world, from NetEase to Polarium and sort of everyone in between. We've ran hundreds of campaigns, over 70 different mobile games that we've worked across. This year, very proud to say that we won the best marketing team at the PGC Awards in Gamescom, which was super nice and unexpected. And look, hopefully today we provide something that is useful for people joining us, that allows them to see how influencer marketing can be used as a tool and as a service that generates sort of tracked, scalable, and profitable source of ROI. And so that's me, and I'll just let Matej introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. So my name is Matej. I've been in the industry for more than 10 years, a consultant. And fuck my life, the connection is not stable. Okay, good. Never mind, I'm back. So I worked with like 50 plus games, soft launched and global launched them with substantial budget. And I have my own creative team. I still work with a few companies on the UA and creative side. And then we started 2.5 Gamers. So I'm the host of the podcast, and I also publish weekly newsletter, which is called Brutally Honest. I like the leading voice on the mobile game growth. Thanks for putting it there. Love it. So we are here today to just talk UA, influencers, and all the fun stuff. If I disappear suddenly, it's because like there are floods in Slovakia. The weather is absolutely terrible, like storms for 5 days. But I will be back. Don't worry, I will be back.
Perfect. Okay, so in today's session, here are the topics that we'll be covering. In the on the software, you'll see that you can submit questions. Those questions will just go directly to us as the sort of administrators, and we'll get through those at the end. But the topics we're going to be covering are why alternative UA channels matter, when is the right time to introduce influencer marketing to the UA mix, does influencer marketing work for all types of games, understanding different platforms, is one influencer platform best for UA, traditional UA versus influencer marketing and the key differences, influencer marketing misconceptions, budget allocation in a diverse UA mix, how much does IM cost, and examining data and examples from real influencer campaigns. It's quite a lot, but I'm sure we'll get through it. So the first question that we're sort of going to hopefully give you guys a answer to is, why is it important to include alternative UA channels in the marketing mix. And so, Matej, from your side, when you're from a background which is a bit more sort of UA focused, out and out, I guess we're sort of more influencer focused. So it'd be good to get more sort of thoughts on, more sort of classic UA channels, and then I can touch on a little bit on the influencer side.
Yes. So the thing is, right now, right now, it's been some time where we don't have only Facebook and Google as the main UA channels, as it was like a few years ago, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Then IDFA happened and all the fun stuff. So now I'm kind of trying to diversify or add the new channels, even in soft launch. When we soft launch a game, don't only run Facebook or Google, just not to make any decision based on only one channel, because that's kind of not ideal. I had this case where we ran Facebook only, and then we almost killed the game. And then suddenly, when we added Google and Unity, we saw way better numbers, and the performance improved. And so it wasn't really about the game; it was about the channel. So that kind of leads me to another point. If one channel stops working and you don't have enough backup channels, then you're kind of, well, in a very bad situation and position. And I had this like idea of adding new channels on as soon as I hit like 1 million spent on a monthly basis, but it's again like a long history. I'm trying to do this like diversification as soon as I can. So anything spending 20, 30, 40K per month, adding another channel, another source of traffic is always beneficial for diversifying and getting the different types of players on the different channels. And, like with the main channels being still Facebook, kind of to a certain extent, Google, Uplavin, and then TikTok, until those 4, definitely the strongest ones. But it's, there hasn't been like a lot of innovation on the UA channel mix in the recent years. So that there is definitely a need for diversification.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think with our clients, when we look at the wider marketing mix, they aim to allocate somewhere between 15 and 20% of their budget to influencer spend. We often recommend starting with YouTube as the sort of the tried and tested method, especially for mobile games. It's something that can be tracked, but it's also important, which we'll get into later, to understand the organic side of it. So just using your MMP and the links and and the link in the description, but then also creating that model to get the data that you need to make confident decisions to sort of scale is very valuable. And with YouTube as well, the size of the opportunity is significant. It's there's a lot of different types of creators out there across a lot of different verticals. It's about testing and iterating. And ultimately, this is something that a lot of our clients, well, all our clients clearly, are utilizing and scaling and running it alongside as a monthly source of profitable UA. YouTube these days, it's no longer as perhaps TikTok has taken its place in that younger audience. YouTube audiences do have a lot of 35 plus. There's a lot of people watching YouTube on their televisions now. It's that older audience that we can tap into, and often those guys come with really nice LTVs when executed correctly.
Nice. Okay. So, but sorry to jump into this, because when this is the important question, and you mentioned this 15-20% budget, right? Like some percentage of the budget goes to influencer. Like, is there? If I mentioned like 40K per month, like 20%, it's not a lot of that.
Yeah, no. So from our side, when we sort of deciding the budgets, we don't sort of use arbitrary sort of figures. What we look at is our clients' key markets. So, for example, the US is often where people want to focus for obvious reasons of the LTV of the players over there. And so what we'll understand is the daily organics in that market, and once we understand the daily organics that the game has in that space, then we can say, okay, enough to what do we need to spend based on the CPM of that vertical within that we're looking to target in order to see that uplift. And if we see, as Matej was sort of saying at the outset, that this is a a channel, other channels might be flagging. It could be, it's not a strict 15 to 20%. It could be larger, it could be smaller.
Yeah.
It's on the results that we get. Everything is performance driven, and not everything is, it's not a one size fits all. And so, yes, 20% of 40K isn't enough, but if it's enough to see, the data that we need to have the confidence to increase it to, 20K of the spend, as long as it's profitable, as long as we can stand behind the numbers, that's what matters.
Yeah, because I kind of usually try to allocate at least 10, 20K to a proper test for influencers. And a proper test meaning, like you said, kind of the numbers I can evaluate properly. And for 10, 20K would be, at least in my opinion, kind of okay or decent budget for testing purposes.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So we talk about here, when is the right time to introduce influencer marketing? We've been brought on board throughout all stages of games.
Yeah.
If it's soft launch, we might not look at the US. We might look at markets where the CPMs and therefore the CPIs are lower. So quite often we do our testing phase in countries like Brazil, where we can understand the model of what's working, what content is working, is the game monetizing. It's all part of the sort of the soft launch strategy. Whereas we've worked with titles like Heyday, for example, a client that we started working with, and other sort of more games that have been in the space much deeper into their sort of existence. 8 years. Perhaps the game may have been around, and then they're going to have a significantly higher daily organics, and so we will have a different model in order to understand that. But yeah, the right time and the spend is there's a lot of variables, and it's really tailored to each individual game and what the objectives are. But always with the premise to understand what's working, and then iterate, and then hopefully scale if all the metrics look good.
Yeah, I now work with one game which entered soft launch, and we are also kind of thinking about adding some influencer campaigns when we figure out the monetization, and then just enter the monetization stage of the soft launch.
Yeah, precisely. I think that's it. I mean, even with games can improve their monetization, almost consistently. You see what's going on Squad Busters right now. You can see the data on Sensor Tower and so on. And so it can be reactive as well to actually we launched a game. The initial metrics were good, but perhaps player retention is not what we thought it was.
Yeah.
So, we need to go back. Monetization isn't what it appeared to be after the first 3 months of all marketing channels being on. And so we're going to sort of take a moment to pause. We're going to the devs and so on are going to look at that. They're going to make those adjustments, and then we'll start it back up again. So it's not put pressure on it, and again, always going back to making sure that all the other things that need to be aligned in terms of activity of players and retention are where they need to be profitable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So does influence marketing work for all types of games? So well, not in my opinion. I mean, I'm doing it for 8 years, so in my experience, very tricky with hyper casual. Yeah, I mean I guess that's a given. Obviously super low LTVs. I think that the lowest sort of LTVs that we might look at for a game, and where we think as a sort of a threshold where we feel would be the lowest in order to get to profitability. LTV in the US, somewhere around $3-4 would be the minimum that a game would have to have enough for us to confidently think, okay, this can work and this can scale. There's other apps out there like Social Casino. Social Casino is super interesting.
Nice.
Because it's a huge area. There's some fantastic games out there, but we're talking about YouTube here. But I think what's been a real game changer in the past sort of couple of years is the podcast space. And so the YouTube community is a little bit, and understandably, very protective over their audience. There's a bit of reluctance to promote social casino games, even though it's not out, paid, cash apps, as it were, paid casino apps. And so, the opportunities to diversify the mix of channels and the content verticals is limited. So what we found is that, podcasts is fantastic. It's that older audience, very heavily 35 plus, and we can find, much wider sort of profitable channels to scale through. And in terms of the tracking, which we could do on a whole separate webinar, to be honest, but it's all but it's again through the MMP, and it's done through IP addresses, and you have your own dashboard. Right. Super nice way of doing it. So largely, those are the two I would flag for like classic influencer marketing on YouTube. Hyper casual, very tricky. Low LTVs sort of is tricky, and then social casino you can, but you're not really going to get up to sort of 5 figures consistently of or 6 figures rather consistently of spend.
So yeah, when I ran influencer campaigns for one casual game with female audience mainly, it was absolute flop. But it was some time ago. So I had like everybody had this idea of like this game needs to be watchable on YouTube, and people need to want to watch like influencers talking about the game, playing the game. But now what you said with the podcasts, kind of makes sense for the female audience, which can promote the casual games quite heavily. So would you agree this also kind of applies to the TikTok influencers and even maybe Instagram influencers or Twitch? For like every genre, there's a different types of the influencer, I would say, platform, I guess.
Yeah, I think with podcasts, where we've seen out and out the best sort of results are the games that have a really good sort of storytelling narrative. I think that lends itself to the sort of the mindset of a podcast listener. Often podcasts are essentially human stories quite often, and true crime being
everybody loves true crime podcasts.
Just loves true crime. Anyway, every time I speak to my dad, he's telling me the new true crime documentaries around, but he's watching. But anyway, it's a whole other thing. But I think with different platforms, I think TikTok, I know several studios who have worked with that. I think it's good on a UGC basis, and a completely sort of different tactic, much more sort of creatively led, less black and white, in terms of input and output. We're going to work with these influencers. It's less about the number of followers. It's much more about the quality of the content that you produce. Instagram, it can be okay. I would never consider it sort of a major channel. A little bit of if you might want to bundle it into a YouTube deal, but I try to sort of split that out. I think really the two areas, and we've tested them. We've done TikTok campaigns for several clients with Instagram over the years. Really, the value in terms of hitting your ROI targets is YouTube, podcast, but then specific games. Really it needs to be tailored as to which channel to use.
Also, I guess different platforms, different objectives, different genres, different objectives as well. As you mentioned before, like the main, not problem, but always kind of a discussion point was like, okay, well, let's run influencer marketing, but how can we measure the ROI properly? And everybody's like, there are these techniques we can try, very similar to what we've done with TV ads as well, but it's not always like super accurate. But then IDFA happened and nothing is accurate anymore. So that's even better.
It's absolutely. And I think you have to take, a stand somewhere. There has to be, some metrics that you do trust. And I think ultimately the look of, the classic way of what we do is you'll take what we call a comparison period. So if we look at the US, again, sort of market, there's a period of time, usually ideally 2 to 3 weeks, where all marketing for that game remains stable. You don't have to switch it off. You just don't increase it. There's no featuring and so on. So we understand, okay, you've got a baseline of 1,000 daily organics in the US. And so in order to see that uplift, we want to hit, 25% on top of that. And then we'll work backwards in terms of what we need to spend in order to hit that based on the CPMs of the verticals in the market. The measurement side, because it's still looking at the data you'll get through the MMP, we're still analyzing and making iterations based on the values of the players, looking at the LTVs, looking at the retention, looking at the day 7 revenues, or whichever one you want to sort of align yourself to. But really, those are. Let's go back to that slide a minute, Alan, sorry. If those are they are the things that will stand behind, and then what we'll do is that will be the track data, and so okay, we can see the track side, and then proportionally allocate the organic side, against the incremental uplift that was seen during the campaign period, and we'll run those campaigns over a very concentrated window. So ideally, all the influencers going live over a 2-day period, so that we can properly attribute that nothing else changed except for the campaign, and this is therefore coming from that traffic, and we can say with confidence that those installs and that that revenue was associated with the influencer campaign.
Yeah, as always, this approach to have the link in the show notes. Obviously, not like 10% of the people actually click on the show notes. Everybody's just searching for the name of the game and everything. And then I think I saw overall when we had the tracked installs, there was let's say 1,000 people, but then in reality it was 4,000 people. It's always 3 to 4x more than the actual tracked installs, and then that kind of changes the whole equation quite nicely.
Exactly, and I think that's such a classic thing that happens with influence marketing, that if you just focus on the tracked, it's not going to be there in terms of performance. But as you say, we usually, as an industry, it depends on the genre, but 3 to 6x. But we won't just arbitrarily assign, okay, your game, we're going to multiply everything by 4. It all goes back. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that was just very simple, very much simplifying the whole view of things.
Look at the organic uplift, and then we'll be able to give a much more. It's 3.2, and apply that going forward. Because really the vast majority of the traffic, of the performance, is organic, and that's why it's so important to do that first test, not immediately just go in and scale and okay, first campaign super big. It's no, let's understand what the K factor is, and then we'll build out and iterate and get to that 3 months, 4 months down the line, we'll get to that phase where we are consistently spending at a level that makes a difference to your overall marketing spend and performance.
Yeah, do you have different ROI goals for influencers? Let's say if companies or games see they 180 profitability or 180 payback period, do you have the same, or it does take a little bit longer for influencers to kind of pay back?
It varies from client to client, really, and on how the game's monetized. So certain games will they'll see the majority of their revenue from their players in a shorter window, so they'll model accordingly. We let our clients do that side of the modeling because they know and they know the data. So we get influencers through the door and we get the data. We do the modeling on the attribution of the installs, and then they'll look at the revenue modeling based on their understanding of player behavior.
Yeah, because we had this case where we had the retention on Facebook for one game, which was 40% day 1, and then let's say 20% day 7 on Facebook. We launched influencer campaigns, and the day 1 retention was 70. I was like, whoa. I've never seen this before. And then day 7 was 35 or something. So it was super good. But then eventually this was I think 1 or 2 months long campaign, which was amazing. But then we were kind of stuck of finding the similar kind of influencers for that game, which would kind of fulfill the same level of performance.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So I think with the retention side, it's a different platform, it's a different kind of user. Overall, I've got some data somewhere I can share around, on sort of the average value of a user coming through YouTube is higher, and I think that comes through, the fact that you're being recommended a product by a trusted voice. They're telling you this is something you want to spend your time and money on, and therefore you're sort of bought into the whole brand, on a deeper level than just seeing sort of an ad on Meta or Google. So again, you can't just take what the exact metrics you're getting from Google or Meta and saying, okay, it's going to be the same for influencers.
Of course.
You need to understand. Yeah, absolutely. So this slide here, this is just looking at, it's just some very top line, metrics here. There's going to be a slide, an Excel we'll look at later on in the presentation, but these are some sort of basic numbers around the conversion rate overall. So typically, what we expect, if it's a casual game, on the first sort of campaign, you might be looking at sort of 0.3 to 0.5. We haven't optimized yet, and then sort of perhaps the second campaign, we're looking at sort of 0.5, 0.8, and then 0.8 upwards. Ideally, is sort of a really good performance. This is sort of a campaign which is sort of in its infancy.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, I think we need to mention here one thing, because I was looking into the Excel sheet, and these ladies or these YouTube channels, these are not gaming channels. It's lifestyle, it's like true crime, fashion, history, and something else, because everybody is always like, oh, we need to run only gaming channels, nothing else, because that doesn't really work. So it's like this is really important. I think you need to find the overlap between where the audience is, right?
Absolutely. I think out of all of the channels, gaming is one of the, it's probably, I don't know if it's in the sort of the top 5 in terms of content creators and genres. Female games in particular, that's more relevant to. You look at true crimes, you look at sort of home renovations, you look at fashion, beauty, all those sorts of things. They are parenting. They are all really relevant audiences and high performing audiences. The female side, simulation games work well. Some cozy titles, creators making cozy content, can work, very well. But absolutely, it's the one I always think is the diamond of it all is true crime. As we were saying earlier, there seems to be a huge correlation, and I think that's maybe because true crime's long form content, people best in games. It's something they might do whilst listening to or watching a true crime sort of YouTube channel. So no, it's a really good point.
And also, for people listening, all of these different channels which are outside of gaming, you can use these videos for inspiration into your creatives, because we had one game which was a home renovation game, very similar to Ridicor, and we're talking about okay, what to actually showcase in the creatives. And then we were trying to find different YouTube channels, and found all these parents who are absolutely stressed out after the whole day being with the kid, and then okay, well, now they want to just relax, and then okay, well, let's play this game. We kind of used this angle, absolutely immediately the creative winner, the best creative of all, and there was just kind of idea outside of games found on the YouTube for the overlapping of the audiences on the different channels as well outside of games.
Absolutely, and I think that sort of will again look at slightly later is the creative optimization. When we're doing the campaigns with the YouTube. So you talk about those moments that people can sort of consciously or subconsciously associate themselves with. So when we're briefing those YouTubers, if it's a casual title, it might be that most casual titles are played in the evening, relaxing for bed. So the YouTuber will be in situ playing the game, and it will sort of set those cues. Oh, actually, this is what I did before, or actually, this is what I could be doing. And it's those little details that really are going to make the difference between, a good and a sort of a great campaign.
Yeah, nice.
So best for, I'll let you start with that one, Matej.
Well, I think that we kind of touched this really. I'm always kind of used to like YouTube influencers, but you mentioned podcasts, and we had the great episode with you and April on Vuga's anniversary, and I think we kind of touched also like that they run different podcasts and different like YouTube shows and everything else. So again, kind of comes back to the actual genre of the game where the audience is, and if we want to run, let's say, PvP MOBA or shooter or whatever, I guess it's most. I mean, it's gonna be on YouTube quite heavily, but there will be another channels that can help quite well for like growth. And I would say I would definitely add TikTok in that case into the mix. Podcast, not really.
For UA, I mean, our biggest spend is our biggest performance-based spending clients podcast. Now, I won't mention the figures, but it's it's sizable. And this quarter,
okay, nice.
We've had over 12 new podcast campaigns for mobile games. So so that's 12 either existing clients or new clients testing it and finding it's working and continuing to spend. So I think performance, as I say, the other side is Twitch. If you're a sort of a cross-platform game, you have a web side, to the browser version. That is also very, very nice. With the Twitch side, you can.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the thing is with Twitch on the sort of the structure of the fees as well is slightly different. So usually on YouTube, it's largely sort of flat fees based on the CPM of the YouTubers, against their average views, or an out CPM deal. Whereas on Twitch you can do a minimum sort of guaranteed fee, but then performance targets on top. And that's because you can have the widget on screen, it's live, you can have a ticker, it's much more the tracking's less of the organic side. So yeah, in terms of UA and best platforms for influencers, I think I'm not knocking TikTok. I just think it's harder to measure. So it has its place 100%. It's just everything that we do, we are sort of sticklers for being able to show our clients, specific results against, actual data. Whereas you might be able to see the organic side on TikTok. It's very hard to attribute it to one person.
Yeah, that's what I want to mention on TikTok, especially thanks to kind of like still viral kind of growth on TikTok. You can get quite significant amount of views easily, or easier than YouTube, which kind of is a nice bump in organics. I mean, we have the Duolingo case, we have the Dumb Ways to Die case as well, where they just don't run any UA and they just kind of focus on their own social posts on TikTok, which got them into quite interesting ranks in the US US App Store, and for free, but still, I mean, is easier than YouTube or Instagram or anything else. But again, it's very case by case, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say so with the TikTok side. Yeah, if you get it right on the creative, it's just the unknown. It's not as black and white. You think you might have amazing creative, you can run 30, 40 pieces of creative, and none of them do what Dumb Ways to Die did, or and that's where it depends on the client's brief. If they just want to have a more stable, consistent thing, YouTube podcast. If they're wanting to do a little bit sort of further outside the box, take some slightly risks or do a bit more experiment a little bit more, then perhaps TikTok is something that's worth testing. It's something that we do, but not as an out performance side. It's much more a bit closer to sort of the brand awareness kind of thing.
Okay. Ooh. Well, there's a huge difference in traditional UA influencer marketing, and a huge difference being, it's, as we discussed, like basically the tracking is quite easier, and also there are self-serve the platforms where you can just log in, you go there, you create a campaign, you run it, and then just connect it with the MMP, any attribution provider. The influencer marketing, that's not a very easy thing, right?
Yeah, I think with the I think it's clearly very different. You guys a little bit more always on as well. Influencer campaigns, you do want to have them concentrated. Over a weekend typically, and on a monthly basis. On the podcast side of things, very different again. The type of media, you have the host read ad, which is the host obviously of the show reading the ad. You can have that baked in, so it sits within that episode sort of indefinitely, or you can buy it dynamically, you can buy it programmatically, and typically minimum flight time is sort of, or campaign length is as a minimum would be 2 weeks.
Okay.
More reliant on the track data and the modeling in a slightly different way. And so from traditional UA, as you say, very, very different. But as long as it's clear on the post campaign that what came from traditional UA and what came from influencer, that's the sort of crux of it, really.
As I always say, influence marketing is a great channel, but I wouldn't run it as the standalone UA pillar. I would always combine it with any other UA channels, because that's it's good addition to the UA channel mix. That's how I would kind of characterize the difference between the channels.
I agree. Yeah, not many of our clients solely do influence marketing. As I say, 15-20% is a broad sort of overview as an average. And it sits alongside, and it takes a while, to get there. But ultimately, when it's up and running, I think any given month we're doing sort of 30 to 40 different mobile gaming campaigns, and it sits alongside, which doesn't take the lion's share, unfortunately.
Yeah. Also, the nice thing about YouTube videos and everything, it kind of sits there from the moment that it's kind of released. And I see it on our YouTube channel. People are coming back to different videos from the past, so you're kind of getting additional installs. It's not exactly the same as when the video is released, but it's still there. It kind of points in to your store, and it's still kind of also a nice brand awareness after the video is out there.
Yeah, and then there's another point on that, really. We talk about soft launches and and game, and then global launches actually in particular. When you're building your community of players, they'll want to have a resource online. So the second most used search box in the world after Google is YouTube. And so if they're looking to find out reviews about your game, they're looking for walkthroughs, they're looking for tips, all of those sorts of things. The byproduct is also seeing that there's this existing community of influencers. It's very searchable. You could look at as a different way to use YouTube on those global launches, creating with high quality but micro creators dedicated content to do those to control that narrative. So you say actually this is the new live op coming up, and in this partnership with SpongeBob SquarePants or a big IP, and it's a really good place to sort of build that side, which has a less measurable effect on the retention also going forward. So there's definitely byproducts to the benefit, and then of course you can license the content to UA. Which is we've seen clients spend tons on sort of very nice looking ads, but actually it was the YouTuber who and their creative that when they turned it to UA performed super nicely.
Oof. And with the budgets, the approach I usually have is you have a certain budget for a year, right? But what companies do, they try to have every month either increase until the end of the year, or just very flat. We are gonna spend every month 1 million. doesn't really work in reality. It's always like seasonal stuff. You want to spend a lot like in the first Q1 on UA, then Q2 as well, then Q3 and Q4. It's more like, I would say, remarketing rather than just pure UA. So it's always kind of an interesting approach for budgeting reasons. And then I also kind of don't really test a lot of new channels in Q4 around Christmas, because I mean the UA, it's always tough. But on the other hand, as you said, like kind of live ops situation where I then have a group of influencers actually talking about new updates and then pointing to like this like new event, new special offer season, where I have like every week a new special offer, which can be quite powerful.
Yeah, I think the appropriate budget is depending on the time of year. As you say, Christmas time, you're competing with a lot of D2C brands is one thing, and so CPMs might be a small premium at that time. There's we often see if you're a mom and in the female sort of led channels, quite often if it's a school holidays, the performance might be affected there, and so there's definitely insights to be had around timing and when best to allocate budget. And it's always great if there is a big live op coming, that's also provides another incentive for someone to download the game, participate, build that that familiarity to the game through that live op. So it's as always on as it can be, but it does change. Some of our clients are flat. Some of them might say, we're going to run it 4 times a year because we've got 4 ops or key events. It really depends on their internal decisions, but also little bits of insight that we might be able to provide to sort of help steer that as well.
Yeah, I see the budgets and stuff for the definitely. If you go back to on that slide, check the QR code. It's a very interesting insights there.
Which one?
No, the QR code on the right hand side. So how everything is calculated for influencer marketing. There's the nice sheet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, any resources that people wish to receive afterwards, we will be more than happy to share those and talk separately with anyone sort of in depth around how the modeling sort of works, or how what data we're looking at and so on. But it's all there.
Yeah, perfect. And how do you even look at all these data points after running the actual campaign? Because there's definitely a case study and sheet afterwards that we can look into, because that is important for like the ROI evaluation, and that's what we all are eager to see.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen actually here. Can you see that now?
Absolutely, yes. Perfect.
Great. So just on here, this is sort of a campaign sheet that we would send typically to our clients. So just to quickly run through, this, got the name of the influencers, obviously, the channels where they're based, the content vertical, and then the sub-content vertical, which is important because lifestyle is very broad. Even off-grid can be farming and so on. And then also past collaborations is important, as so using tools like Tubular and so on, that we can see, okay, pre-campaign, we as a company work with around 300 creators on YouTube every month on behalf of mobile games, and a significant amount on podcasts also. But we might, what's also good is to further validate, the performance of a channel. So if we could see, actually, this channel has worked with another casual game which is deemed a competitor of a client, and they have then been booked multiple times by that brand, by that game. The chances are that they've gotten good results from that influencer, and that's another indicator that they should have a good chance of sort of high performance. We also look at the day 7 average views, because most of the performance is coming from the first 7 days. So we'll be focusing more on those average views as opposed to just overall average views. CPMs, again, day 7 CPMs rather than overall CPMs, and they'll vary, significantly, obviously depending on the market. Then, the genre, tech channels very expensive. The younger channels less so. And then we'll have, the audience breakdown, the share. This is largely US and English speaking, and then just the breakdown for gender, split into different age brackets.
Yep.
And then the other fun part is always, with influencers, you can have everything signed, but
it doesn't really mean that much, right?
And you get ghosted for no reason, like 2 hours before, which a lot of my team, I spend their evenings, around a campaign launch, chasing up people over, whether it's in the US or wherever it may be. So us as a business, 70% of the influencers we work with are US based, sort of 20% sort of Europe, and then 10% markets like Japan and Brazil. And then we'll look at the performance analysis again. It's looking at retention and the conversion rates, the average revenue, day 7 per user, CPI, and then start to look at the tracked data. I'm not going to get into all in detail now. The tracked data, preparing that to understand the organics separately, and then looking at the organics plus the tracked, and then against the audiences and the influencers, so see what the correlations are. And then finally, doing our sort of content creative analysis. So, real little details, but important details around, what was the gameplay that was used? Was it self-generated, something that themselves? Was it something supplied? Were the assets supplied by the client? Also, contractually, we ask each influencer to play our clients' games for a minimum of an hour so they can talk about it organically. All these sorts of things, ultimately come to allow us to then present, where do we want to, provide, recommendations for future campaigns. Again, everything from the data side is where we build our optimizations.
Nice. You showed there like the ad or the game was shown in first 10% or the first 25% of the video. Is that important for the performance, or does it really matter that much?
It's hugely important, and so I think it's one of the biggest sort of optimizations that are needed. So, and it's a classic, because if we've managed YouTubers and so on, and you can look at their retention rate of their audience. If you're halfway into a video, you've probably lost 30-40% of what you're paying for.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, you really want to stick at the beginning. And then there's other details. I mean, when we look at working with big creators in particular, you look at someone like a Mr. Beast, who's obviously a bit controversial these days, but
a little bit.
But you can see a lot of his integrations. He'll talk about the game. He'll turn back and do something about the challenge happening in his video. Then he'll talk about the game. That's like interrupted. We would never want that. And you'll see on his channel, the sponsorships, quite often that's what happens, and they're really sort of. But what we do is really sort of very adamant that it has to be consistent, dedicated 60 seconds as a minimum for our clients' games, so that they really get the opportunity to engage the audience about the game itself.
Yeah, and when I look into our YouTube channel of 2.5 Gamers, I see that the retention for the listeners, watchers, fans, subscribers, everything in the end, like half of the video, it's always, or like maybe like 75%. That's the last kind of resort for any ads shown in any of the episodes that I would kind of consider.
Yeah,
so
and
almost nobody's there anymore.
Absolutely. And if an influencer's, if you think, wow, this influencer is really great and it's such a good fit, but they're just being so adamant that it has to be halfway, then you have to get a very good CPM for it to make sense. they just have to accept that. Otherwise, the performance isn't there. So you can trade it off. If there's someone that says, look, all of our integrations are midway, then okay, then we're paying you $15 instead of $35 CPM, and so on.
Yeah. Also, do you think, or do you see the gameplay kind of makes difference as well? Like what kind of gameplay they use?
Yeah, absolutely. So you look at if you look at like a match 3, for example. If you look at match 3, it's those winning moments that are really nice to have and important to have, so that the influencer completes a level they've always been stuck on, or something similar to that, where they sort of show the joy and it's very sort of emotive that they've achieved this, this in-game moment, something that resonates. And so that's a really, little, small insight there. There's other games that are,
but how it works with creatives these days. Like you always need to fail. you fail, and then they didn't ask the audience like, can you do better? So we know.
Exactly, but and then other games might, you look at some well-known RPGs and they've got super nice graphics, so you might want to focus on graphics. You might want to focus on hero collection if that's a big, thing for the brief. Should really, have a little bit of, iteration depending on the vertical. So, if you're working, on a more male-focused sort of RPG title or whatever it may be, and you're working, you're looking, you're working with gaming influencers. Maybe they're a League of Legends channel as an example. League of Legends has lots of champions. It's one of the reasons people play it. You might want to sort of focus on the champion, the collecting side. There's really, again, something that we would work on with the game to understand what they might have seen in their UA ads as working. So if it's that failure thing that you mentioned, that could be a nice narrative to have. But I think it's I'll stop rambling. It's one a little bit longer.
No, don't worry. I'm just looking into questions because we have 3 questions and I think they're quite interesting. So I can I think 2 connected to influencers. One is CPI testing. So when we work with influencers, we usually also include a buyout for a certain number of days. Is it possible to use audio content, podcasts in UA ad campaigns? Like, how would that work?
Yeah. So what we always recommend there is to do that post campaign. So if we've got a campaign going live and there's 10 different influencers in that campaign, we don't contractually have that that we want to license the UA. The content for UA purposes up front, because it may be a case that post campaign actually we only want to use 3 or 4 of them. So you could possibly end up paying for things that you don't need and a small premium on top. Often also post campaign, the relationship between the brand and the influencer is stronger because they've been paid and they are they've had a chance to see the campaign go live. So the influencer might actually just give it to you for free. And so it's something that very easy to sort of ensure that we get those assets to be used by our clients, and they can be used for 6-month deals, 12-month deals, but typically we'll get them for either free or somewhere around 10 to 20% on top of the sort of associated fee.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I kind of not directly to podcast ads, but I try to get the UA, the videos from influencers to use them in the UA as well, because it's always kind of works. Then, if you want to add something to that.
No, I think yes.
Okay. There is another question regarding what about timing? What time of the day, week, year do you recommend, I guess, to run influencers? And also if there is if you prefer running shorter or more intense videos or longer videos, or what's the duration should be?
Sure. So in terms of timing, most influencers have like an upload schedule. We can't always stick to that. So we always recommend campaigns over the weekend. And so we see best performance on a Saturday, as an example. Sunday's also very good. So we'll tend to run a campaign if it's a 2-day, if it's a 3-day, we'll add the Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a concentrated campaign on a monthly basis is typically what we do. And then we'll have it on the same sort of, the 3rd weekend of every month, as an example. and then going back, if we've done all the legwork and we found an influencer and for whatever reason they couldn't make that, they drop out at the last minute, but they say we still would love to do it. We know that we just say to them, okay, we can fit you in sort of next month. With regards to the length of the content, anything sort of under 5 minutes is not something, YouTube are making 5 minutes or shorter videos is something we tend to avoid, mainly because if you've got a 60-second ad, you're sort of dominating that content. The people watching that content, they're not sort of they're not often the sort of the high value users, and then no real sort of limit to the length of the content. So when we're true crime influencers, their video is like an hour long, and so we'll still stick that 60 seconds in the first sort of couple of minutes, and that will do that will do the job. It's just the shorter content we try to avoid.
But also, like, I think, well, at least the question from my end would be a 60-second ad versus 2-minute ad, 30 seconds, 5 minutes in that hour-long content.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, so it's the same with podcasts. So we've looked at all of these data points and gone into sort of depth as to the correct length. Podcast is slightly shorter, 45 seconds is okay. Is the optimum amount of time for performance. YouTube, 60 is a little bit more visual, a little bit more to get through. Yeah. So 60 seconds, even with regards to if it's an hour long, that's not a factor that should impact the length of the integration.
Okay, yeah, nice. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And then we have the last question here. So we are testing a tycoon game with the publisher for creative assets, mainly in the US, yet testing in India for trial CPI. So we plan to use the lowest CPI creatives in the US market. Should we explore other markets for testing? If so, where else can we effectively test them? So I think that's for me. In terms of the CPI testing, and the creative tests, I try to have both India or US, or both at the same time, and try to see if I can get the creative winner or the same creative winner in India and US, because not every time the same creative winner kind of resonate with India or US. But if I do in the A/B test and I see India is giving me the same creative winner, then I test the creatives in India only, because then it's quite cheaper and you get the answers quickly, and then you can kind of offload these creative winners into the business as usual campaigns as well. So this is a good approach, but I wouldn't really go in any other countries. Sometimes I use Brazil, but usually India is the way to go. Depends on the genre, obviously, but yeah, this should do the trick. And I think that's it.
Nice.
I think that's it. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks Ed for having me as well. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you for everyone for joining. It was hope it was useful, and I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me just Edward Fuller on Media Bodies. This is the business, and so if there's anything you want to chat about separately, I am always keen to chat. So thanks again, and thank you for your time, Matej.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Right. Cheers. Bye bye.